Tara graciously agreed to do a presentation for us on sexual health and cancer, which is an incredibly important topic in our world with regard to making sure that people have a quality of life that is inclusive of all aspects of who they are, not just their physical and medical well-being. So Tara Galliano helps women reimagine their bodies after cancer and rekindle their sexuality. Wow, that sounds exciting just there. She is a certified sex therapist and teaches the class Rediscovering My Body After Cancer to amazing, courageous women who have had cancer. For the past 5 years, she has taught this class at Boulder Community Health. Currently, she is creating an online community based on the content of this class, making it accessible to women everywhere. She's also writing a book based on Rediscovering My Body class, so she may share widely with all those that are seeking sexual renewal after cancer. Tara can be reached at tara@bouldersextherapy.com. And we've added that link to our agenda, so you'll be able to find that as well. So Tara, please go ahead and share your screen and tell us more about your expertise and how you're helping women reimagine themselves.
Great. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. So I'm just going to pull up my PowerPoint presentation and let's see. It's loading now.
And we forgot, sorry, Karen, the other Karen Wheeling, we forgot to let you introduce yourself.
Oh, that's okay. I wrote it in the chat. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see, share. Here we go. Are you seeing my PowerPoint presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So this is the class that I teach, Rediscovering My Body. I've been teaching that for the past 5 years at Boulder Community Health, and it's been such a honor and a privilege to work with all of these women. It's an intimate group of 8 women, and we go through the process of looking at body image, at trauma in the body after a cancer diagnosis and after treatment. And then we also look at pleasure and how to begin to trust the body again, to allow pleasure in the body, and start looking at how they can reclaim that in their lives and focus on their sexual relationships with their partner, or look at dating if they're single. So this is my contact information, Tara Galliano at Boulder Sex Therapy. BoulderSexTherapy.com is my website, and my phone number is there because I love to do phone consultations. I do 15-minute phone consultations for women who are interested in the work that I do, and it's just such a great way to connect. If I am not the resource for you, then I like to put you in the direction of someone who can help you. So I really enjoy those conversations. And so today I really wanted to focus on some of the questions that people have after a cancer diagnosis. And so for myself, focusing on the patient's desire to start talking about sex and sexuality. So it's not unusual to have questions swirling through their minds specifically about their cancer. What's their prognosis? What is their treatment going to be like? How is this going to impact their energy level? How are they going to move forward? And so the focus oftentimes begins with survival and also understanding how to best navigate their medical treatment. That's a really critical piece. Oftentimes, I think at this point, a lot of information is given to the patient about alternative therapies, complementary healthcare, and sex and sexuality. And I think they're often overwhelmed, and they say that they may have gotten a flyer about something, but they don't remember it or they misplaced it. And then they find that the conversation doesn't continue from this place. So cancer and its treatment can have a huge impact on sexual functioning whether or not it is reproductive cancer or cancer of on erogenous zone, is that there will be an impact sexually regardless for the individual. Ideally, I like clients or patients to start the conversation with their care providers at the beginning of treatment so they have an understanding of how treatment will impact them sexually. What I find is that oftentimes people don't have comfort or fluency speaking about sex and sexuality. They don't have a vocabulary to say the things that they want to say about how they experience pleasure in their body and how they can continue to experience pleasure in their body after a cancer diagnosis. We as providers ideally would initiate that conversation. Oftentimes when people are referred to me or referred to my practice, it's a physical therapist or it's a massage therapist or it's somebody who's doing hands-on work with that patient who the patient then felt like they could be vulnerable with that provider and start speaking about the intimate aspects of their life, about how their relationship has been sexually with their partner, or how they've stopped dating, or how they would like to know more about fertility issues, but they didn't know who they should direct their questions to. And as I was saying, some of us just feel awkward discussing sex. We don't necessarily grow up in sex-positive families. We don't necessarily grow up in sex-positive cultures where we have that fluency and confidence speaking about sex and sexuality. If we do, sometimes we feel much more comfortable speaking with somebody of the same sexual orientation as us, or the same gender, or some identifying characteristic that we can relate to. Women often want to speak with women about topics of sex and sexuality. That isn't always the case, but that is often the desire that I hear from women. Men, I have found, who have spoken with me are really looking at getting some tools or resources that they can try on in the comfort of their own home, where women tend to desire more community support and are not afraid of asking questions in relationship to others, and that they learn a lot from the stories or the process or the experiences of the other women in this class, particularly Rediscovering My Body, that through this camaraderie, that there is an experience of normalizing the process of having cancer, normalizing the process of having treatment, normalizing the process of how it has impacted them sexually. And they're more willing to have this conversation with the other women in the group because there's been identified common themes, regardless of whether they have the same type of cancer. So when patients come to see me, I like to give them some thoughts about how to proceed, especially if their provider has not opened up the conversation around sex and sexuality. So I give them some questions to start considering for themselves and start identifying, are these the ones they need to articulate to their provider? Are these the questions that they need to ask and find out answers for? Oftentimes, particularly with men, it's very interesting. Men in heterosexual couples often have their wife or spouse there to hear the answers. The women are very invested in supporting the men, and they want to be there to get the answers about how sex and sexuality are going to be impacted by cancer, by prostate cancer treatment primarily is what I see. Women always say in my class that they wish that their partner was there, and so we host Boulder Community Health actually hosts a class for couples, so the partners get to have that information in a weekend workshop where it's just 3 hours on a Saturday morning. But I think it's a great opportunity for the partners to get a better understanding of the desire of the woman to hear what brings her pleasure, how to proceed with touching her, how to take these baby steps. Oftentimes what I find is that the partner of the woman who's been diagnosed with cancer is very fearful to touch her. They find that they are scared that they're going to cause her pain, and they don't wish to cause her any pain. And they find that there's a chasm then between the two of them, and they really don't know how to bridge that chasm and come closer to her physically. Again, there's a real fear about, how am I going to touch her when I've seen her go through so much pain and suffering, and how will we ever experience pleasure again? And again, I think it's really about taking these baby steps. And so I have plenty of tools and activities and exercises that I have couples do that are really about engaging first in the conversation about how to bring pleasure back into the relationship, and then taking some baby steps towards holding hands and bringing affection back in the relationship, and really using the most important organ for sex and sexuality, which is the brain, and how are they creatively or imaginatively or playfully connecting in a fun and loving way that is not so pressure-filled that there's a demand for intercourse or demand for orgasm right away. So some of the questions to consider are, these are just some of the general questions that I would let a patient know that they should ask their provider about. And certainly finding the provider that is best going to address these answers, and also that they feel comfortable bringing this subject up to. So again, maybe if they're a woman, that maybe they want to connect with another woman. Or maybe if for a provider, maybe there's somebody in the office that is identified because they have more comfort speaking about sex and sexuality, that they can address this topic with the patients that they see there. Or maybe that provider can help the other providers start talking about this in a comfortable way that's brief. Or maybe just getting a list of resources for patients, books, websites, other groups or support networks that are out there that are addressing these topics, especially if the provider doesn't feel comfortable themselves. And again, I'm more interested in the questions than the answers per se, again, because I want to empower the patients to have some fluency and some comfort in taking charge of their own treatment to find out some of the answers that are best going to work for them. Oftentimes, if their partner is present for this conversation, they remember twice as much, or they remember 3 times as much, that they're writing down some of the answers, or maybe they've cataloged some of the questions before they've gone in to speak with the provider, and they want to know about some basic ways that they can connect on an intimate level or on a sexual level. This question number 3 in particular, is it safe for me to have sex if I'm having chemotherapy or radiation? I see again and again, and I'm glad that people are asking that, and I'm glad that they feel comfortable asking me that. Recently, I was at a talk in Lone Tree, and I think one of the women there wanted to know about using the cannabis or CBD oil for arousal, and if she took that and ingested it, then would her partner get a high from it, and would he then test positive for a drug test? And he was a federal employee and he needed to test negatively. And I thought, well, that's such an interesting question. And yeah, of course not, but that she didn't know that answer, and that was something that just Googled, that she really asked in the setting that was safe, and that she wanted to know, what is the answer to that? And who would I have addressed that question to if not a sex therapist? So really good questions. I think all questions are good once they're asked. Here's a big piece of the work that I do in Rediscovering My Body. It's about body image. A lot of women struggle with self-confidence, and self-confidence is critical for good sexual desire, for good sexual attraction, or for just feeling sexy. And so for a woman to have a better understanding of where she is at her edge in terms of feeling comfortable, and feeling sexy. And then how does that translate in her relationship with her partner? How can they create that erotic environment together? Especially if she's struggling with low energy, especially if she's struggling with low confidence or low self-esteem or a low body image. So how to work with those effectively. And one of the things that we do in the Rediscovering My Body class that I love is that we actually go to an adult toy store and we look at lingerie and we look at different lubricants and we look at different sex toys and we look at different ways that can help increase the confidence of the woman. And I think that that is always one of the funnest classes that we engage in because there's a lot of humor and again, a lot of different questions and curiosities about different things that the women can try. And of course, emotional health. Yes, I think all of the support groups that I've been to for women, for men, with different types of cancers, breast cancer support groups has been a critical area where I've gone to speak. I just think that that is so important, that we need communities. We need communities where information is being disseminated that is accurate and looking at topics of intimacy and sex and sexuality. Is that women have questions, men have questions, and I think communities are really critical, whether it's an online community or whether it's a community that you're meeting with people bi-monthly in person or weekly in person. It is that emotional support. It's that container, and that there's a guide and a leader there that's helping bring people forward with their journeys in sex and sexuality. It's really critical. And I am a big proponent, if you look at my website, for group sex therapy, which is not a big seller. But it's so important to have that peer support and again, know that we're not in this alone. I don't believe that we're meant to do this life alone. I really think that there's so much need for camaraderie and for conversations and for community. And this is a class that I teach at Boulder Community Health. I've been teaching that for 5 years. I will be teaching that again in October. It's taught in the spring and in the fall every year. And this October, I think it will be on Thursdays from 5 to 6:30. The hospital heavily subsidizes this class. So it's offered to women for, I think, $60 for all 6 weeks, which is such a great, great service for women. So it breaks down to $15 a class. They're 90-minute classes, and they are a wonderful opportunity for women to connect to other women around issues of sex and sexuality and body image and relationships. But what is alive in the group is welcome. Oftentimes women have different issues that are alive for them. So over the years, we've covered topics of fertility or pornography or betrayal or dating. Not all the groups have the same questions. So it's really alive with what is necessary for that group to dive into. And I so welcome those topics. Some of the feedback that the participants in the class have said. The class really shed a light into this dark shame and has greatly enhanced our marriage as a result. I know that was from one who, after the class was over, went away with her husband on a wild, adventurous weekend where she had rectal cancer and she had not been able to have any type of intercourse for, I think, about 3 years. And after the first time of attempting, they were so, what she would say, unsuccessful, that it was damaging to both of them and they didn't even want to talk about it. But after coming to the class, learning some tools and techniques, they were able to move forward in, and again, a very loving and fun way and explore things in a very simple way, and really more about creating the intimacy or the emotional bond between the two of them. And that was the critical piece, that they could laugh together again, that they could remember who they were to each other again, and that they weren't so scared that they weren't going to get it right, that it gave them permission to try different things. So the last part about some vulnerable conversations, I think, is really about the courage of the women who take the class and their ability to be vulnerable and hold that space for the other women in the class. So it's been, again, such an honor to work with all of the women who've gone through this class. I do offer a free Zoom webinar. I do that regularly, and this next one is September 20th at noon, and it's just an opportunity to ask questions for women who are interested in the Rediscovering My Body class and who want to have their specific questions answered about sex and sexuality, relationships. We'll be looking at body image and some specific tools and techniques that they can take home and take away with them. And it's an absolutely free webinar and really a great opportunity to just have some questions answered. So I love doing, I like offering these things because I think they're important for women to connect with each other. And then finally, a retreat in November based on this class, Rediscovering My Body, and it will be up in Netherlands in the mountains and the meadows in a custom-built home that is absolutely beautiful, and I've hired a personal chef who will come and cook for the 8 women on this retreat, and I would love for women to sign up and have this intimate experience in the course of a weekend instead of over the course of 4 weeks, and it is the first weekend of November. And this I already mentioned is the Rediscovering My Body class in October at Boulder Community Health. Love that class. And that is that. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I think 2 more minutes left.
Well, that sounds like a wonderfully freeing opportunity for women to talk about what's really important to them as they move beyond just the cancer treatment, but onto their ongoing physical and emotional needs. I'm curious in terms of what might be available for men as well. I talked to a number of men going through prostate cancer treatment who are very concerned about their ability to perform and be able to have meaningful relationships with their partners as well. Can you speak to some resources or options for them to get support as well?
Yes, and so I am hosting a class in October as well. I think it is on Saturday. I want to say October 19th, but I'll have to check the dates. And it is a 3-hour class for men, and of course their partners are welcome to come as well. But primarily it is for men, and we talk about prostate cancer, and we talk about the different devices that are available for men. And we've offered this class in the past at Boulder Community Health, and so I'm excited to be offering it again. Oftentimes we have a doctor come in and speak to the men about some of their experiences, so it's nice to have the medical provider in there with myself, and we'll be looking at specific activities and tools to really look at increasing the intimacy. I think that the inability to have an erection really hits the heart of a man's for a lot of men, and they struggle within how to be sexual with their partner. And some of the ways that we work with this at Boulder Sex Therapy and in this workshop is looking at how to increase intimacy. So again, build an emotional connection to their partners, and then easing off the emphasis, which can be so demanding, on intercourse. And so really looking at how do you experience pleasure in your body that is not focused on your erection or penile vaginal intercourse, but looking at how you feel pleasure in your body, how you can sustain that pleasure in your body, how you can experience pleasure with your partner, and how she or he can have experiences of pleasure within the relationship too. So really looking at exploring different means. What I find too is that we often have other opportunities or other erogenous zones that can be developed when old ones are not as available. So the neuroplasticity of the brain, as the brain again is one of the most important organs for sex, is that opportunity is there, and we just really need to focus in and cultivate that.
Very good. Does anyone else have other questions? Otherwise, I have a few others, but I wanted to make sure other folks on the call could ask their questions too.
Tara, this is Carlin. What's the most common advice or teaching that you provide to your clients?
I'd say for women, I'd say one of the most effective tools that we use a body map, which is created by one woman tracing the outline of another woman, and it helps the woman externalize her body and start to identify her erogenous zones or her zones of her body where she experiences pleasure. When women have had different types of surgeries, mastectomies, oftentimes they don't have sensations of pleasure there. If they have any sensations, there's usually a feeling of numbness, and they don't want to necessarily be touched there, at least initially. And so I think the outline of this body and then the women filling it in helps them recognize the areas of pleasure that they may have forgotten about because they've been so focused on the loss that they've experienced in their body. So it's an opportunity to rebuild the awareness that there is pleasure in their body, that they like to have foot massages, or maybe they like to have shoulder massages, and also there are these areas of their bodies that are off limits. And I think again, this external representation is really powerful for women because they didn't conceptualize their body or their image like that, or they can see parts of their body that they actually really appreciate that they hadn't done so. And then once they've identified that for themselves, they share it with their partners. And that has been a huge, I would say, conversation starter. And they might then offer to do that with their partner, that their partner can then explain the areas of pleasure that they experience in their bodies. And then there's this back and forth conversation that did not happen before, that they weren't even clear on how to get to. And then they can easily identify, because again, they have this external image of their bodies, and they can have a conversation about, I like to be touched here, or this feels pleasurable to me when you stroke me here. And again, it engages a conversation in a way that other tools don't necessarily.
Any other questions for Tara? Kind of a quiet group today. Tara, you had mentioned a couple other classes, and as far as if people wanted to follow up or register for any of these classes, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, they can contact me. I usually fill all of the classes at Boulder Community Health. So Nana Bow is the nurse navigator there, and she's amazing, and she will always direct the women or the men who are interested in either the workshop for men or the workshop for couples or the women's class, Rediscovering My Body, to me. So feel free to give me a call. What I like to do is I like to do an initial screening to make sure that this is an appropriate class for you. And then if it is, then I sign you up, and it's very easy. And I love to speak with everybody on the phone. It's just a nice way to introduce myself and to learn more about you.
Okay. And then as far as other resources, do you have a resource list that people can reference either for online information or books or some other references that might be useful if they wanted to do some exploration on their own?
Yes, absolutely. Goodness, I have so many. And again, they can contact me and I can give them that list of items. I've got books, I've got websites. It's just, as a member of ASECT and being a certified sex therapist, my colleagues, there's so many, goodness, resources out there of people doing different things for women, for men with different types of cancer, and that I would be happy to share that.
Very good. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today and your expertise and sharing this information with all of us and allowing us to record it so that folks who aren't able to be here today can still go back and get the information and benefit from all of your knowledge and the